Okay, I have 2 more questions. Even though we hit 8 o'clock, are you game? Okay. Next one is from Mr. Zeldin. What should the U.S. do about, you mentioned ISIS before, that's on my list, about the growing threat of ISIS in the Middle East? What can we do? What should we do?
The president gave a speech around September 10th, and that was his strategy for destroying ISIS. That followed a few weeks of bad PR after he said that he had no strategy, and then he made his announcement that was his strategy. His strategy is going to be effective in temporarily disrupting some of the operations of ISIS. You will be able to kill some of the bad guys. You will be able to take out some of the command and control. You would be able to take out some of their logistics. It has a 0% chance of destroying ISIS. I wish I could stand here and tell you that his strategy is going to work at destroying ISIS. When I was in Iraq in 2006, I had a chance to meet these Iraqi military and Iraqi law enforcement. It is a victory to get them to show up to work. If they have a precinct that is hundreds of feet from their house and not expecting any threat whatsoever that day, we can't even get them to show up there. So for them to be able to travel hundreds of miles away and for them to kill this element that makes Al-Qaeda look like Boy Scouts, it's not going to work. They're not well trained. They're not fighting out of love for country and patriotism to uphold the Iraqi constitution, way of life, and rule of law. They care about their family. They want to get a paycheck, but they have no desire at all to go to Western Iraq and kill ISIS. In Syria, it concerns me that we're going to spend 6 months, a year, or 2 years trying to train a small element whose fight isn't even with ISIS. And then once they go through their basic training, that all of a sudden these special forces, Syrian rebels, all of a sudden are going to be killing ISIS.
The question was, what should we do?
Well, for one, the president should appoint a general to be in charge on the ground. Someone like a David Petraeus, who was put in charge at the end of 2006, 2007. They were given the flexibility and resources to implement their vision to be able to turn the tide. The president in his speech said, this is going to be different than past wars in Iraq and Afghanistan because there will be no troops on the ground. In the same speech, a paragraph later, he says, tonight I'm announcing I'm sending 495 additional troops to Iraq. So those are boots on the ground. Now, I would like to know who they are, what their job is, who is in charge. But with all due respect, Commander-in-Chief Obama is not General Obama. And he needs to put someone in charge of the effort on the ground who knows these people, who have deployed several times, who could send a recommendation up to the Joint Chiefs and the Pentagon, can make a recommendation to the President, and that the President can change his strategy.
ISIS is a very serious thing, and it is a threat that could eventually reach our shores, and it's a threat that certainly imperils the safety and stability of the Middle East and our allies in the Middle East. So we have to deal with it. Now, the strategy that my opponent refers to as the President's strategy. It's not the President's strategy. It's the administration strategy, which includes the Joint Chiefs of Staff, is one that would keep our role limited to training and arming the Iraqi army, which we've already spent $30 billion training and equipping, and training and equipping the moderate Syrian opposition and supporting the Peshmerga, and all of that would be supported by airstrikes from us and other nations in the coalition. I think we need to give that strategy an opportunity to work, and I'll tell you why. The reason I say that is that this cannot become another Middle East conflict between the Christian West and the Muslim Middle East. Let us remember that when we went to Iraq in 2003, we went there to depose a dictator. We did, in about 5 minutes, and defeated his army in a couple of weeks. And then found ourselves there for 11 years, fighting enemies that did not exist when we invaded. There was no ISIS, there was no Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, there were no Sunni militias, there were no, or Sunni insurgency, there were no Shia death squads and Shia militias. So what's to say that we defeat ISIS and all of a sudden there's another group not coming up? General Dempsey was asked, how can we defeat ISIS in 90 days? And he said it can't be done. It said it can't be done militarily. Those are just the facts. It has to come from the governments of the Middle East, and it has to come from Sunnis being made to feel a part of the governments of the Middle East, as opposed to disenfranchised and repressed.
Time is up.
Our military has been stretched very thin over the course of the last 13 years. A lot of missed Christmases and birthdays, anniversaries. It's been a strain on our military. And I think that there's a strong public sentiment that fills just about every single person in this room we're not looking for a fight with ISIS. And sometimes a conflict finds you. And regardless of however we got to where we are right now, I'm not saying it because I'm rooting against the president on this. I wish his strategy would work. I want his strategy to work. I'm just saying that one of the reasons why it took us 5 minutes, or it took us 2 weeks to take over the country, was because they laid down their arms. So these people who are supposed to defeat ISIS on the ground don't care. So we need to change the strategy.
Time is up.